Hello guys, it's good to be back again. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe and share. Let's get to 100 subscribers. I remember 3 months ago I just started, only had 2, 3, 4 subscribers. Now I'm have 78 subscribers. I don't take it for granted. Road to 100. And Happy New Year guys. It's 2023, 3rd day of January. And we keep on grinding, we keep on working, and we keep on pushing. I hope everyone is good, healthy and strong, and I hope this year will fulfill all your dreams. So let's get started. So today I'm going to be discussing about if you, some of you have, I know you've heard, some haven't, but Japan has decided to rearm. Japan is on the way of removing its fascist constitution and amending Article 9 and ensuring that it rearms back and it comes back to the olden days of Japanese army being a force to be reckoned with. So Japan is pledging to invest more than $300 billion into its military and become par with 2% contribution to military defense. That's the requirement of NATO. So Japan is not in NATO first of all, but it's like a member. It's like an observer. But that's very interesting but it works with NATO. So Japan, this will make Japan to have third largest military in the world in terms of machinery, equipment, and all this stuff. And today we are going to look at why is Japan rearming. After the Second World War, we all know Japan was heavily defeated by the Americans. A new constitution was put in place, a constitution to promote peace and unity. And Japan, old ways of conquest and war were over, and now it was supposed to forge to forge a new way of peace. So what happened in that time is that a new constitution was drawn up, and where the constitution required that the Japanese military could only act as a defense military. Their capabilities of the military was heavily reduced, and the Japanese army was not allowed to mobilize, to invest, to become this grandeur, this big military like the Americans. So at that time, America and Japan had a commitment of military assistance. America will always protect Japan in case of anything. America has the nuclear weapons. But that time there was no. It was easy. It was at a time where there were no threats. But now we're in a different world. In 2022, the war in Ukraine has changed everything drastically. If you look at the rise of China. China was colonized by Japan. In fact, Japan colonized South Korea and China. China is very angry about Japan till today because of that. The Chinese were tortured, killed. If you go and look back at the history, the human experiments, all those things that the Japanese did to the Chinese, burying them alive. The Japanese and the Nazis had the same mind of mentality. The body experiment. They were so disgusting. Like what Japan did to China and South Korea, especially China, was very inhumane, and this animosity has never ended. So with the rise of China and the South China Sea, we all know the three dash lines. The first island chain, the second island chain, the third island chain, the third island chain is where Taiwan is. Next to Taiwan, there is the Okinawa Islands. The Okinawa Islands are properties of Japan. So you can see that China is trying to control the South China Sea by building artificial military bases. Chinese planes have been, warships have been entering Japanese territory. So Japan has been feeling very, 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 very afraid. I was reading somewhere that there was a meeting in Tokyo in the 1991s to discuss about world peace, and all, how to promote peace and unity. It was a meeting organized in Tokyo, and the person was saying even in that time in 1991 there were heavy talks of amending the constitution of Japan to allow a military build-up. So it means that this is not some talk that has started now. This is a talk that has been there since probably even the 1980s. Probably Japan saw China as a rising power and they were very afraid. Another thing I'll suspect is that the military business is a very lucrative business, and there were players that felt that if Japan started manufacturing, they could make money. So with the rise of China now, it has made Japan to start to rethink of its foreign policy and military policy. And it's very interesting that before this war of Ukraine and Russia, Japan doctrine or Japan foreign policy towards Russia, in 2013, they decided to do business of buying gas and oil and do business. And the foreign policy at the Ministry of Foreign Policy of Japan said that they want to build relationship with Russia, healthy relationship and strategic relationship. Now, if you go and read it, it says that Russia is a strategic enemy. It's like a strategic threat. Before this year, if you read before the incursion of the Chinese into the Japanese territories through ships and through planes, the foreign policy of Japan was the same, that they see China as a strategic ally that they can work with. Now China is seen as a strategic threat, and mark you, the biggest trader to Japan is China. So they are very big in terms of trade volume. And then now there's an underlining of this animosity. So as you look at how this situation is playing, it seems that the Ukraine and the Russian war is a drop in the ocean, because if you look at where the South China is, there is China, and as you can see, the NATO militaries are encircling China. Japan has decided to rearm. South Korea is also probably deciding to increase its military expenditure. I was looking at a report that was showing that all governments in the world have increased their military expenditure for the first time in history. Military expenditures of all the governments in the world have gone over $2 trillion. All governments in the world have invested heavily in the military. 2022, and this is going even to be more. So Japan has invested 300 billion. The other day Germany said it's going also to invest 300 billion. Australia is also investing in its class of submarines. South Korea is also investing. If you look at the way this great power politics is being played, it seems that the biggest issue, all this is aimed at countering China and Russia. On the case of Japan, China feels that Japan could be the first defense in case they went to war with America. The Japanese could be used to counter, to counter China strategically and even in terms of military. Let's not forget that China and America have an issue with Taiwan, and then because Taiwan is in the island chain, is in the second island chain. So if you look at where Taiwan is, China wants to control that whole area. Next to Taiwan, it's the Okinawa Island. The Okinawa Islands have been properties of Japan. And if you look now, the treaty between Japan and America of military assistance, there's an American military base over there in Okinawa Island. The Chinese are not very happy with this. And the more the Chinese dragons keep growing, this is putting a very big, bringing fear amongst the Japanese, and that's why they are deciding to invest. Before, there was this talk of changing because the Japanese constitution Article 9 states that the Japanese army, Japan cannot have an army for offensive, just for defensive. And what happened is that the politicians in Japan have used a backdoor trick where they have created an army but labeled it as like a police, because the constitution says that they cannot arm an army, they cannot buy equipment for the army, they cannot have an army. So they've created an army but it's like a police, so it's not affected by the constitution. But now that brings an issue, because if you're creating a police force, it has certain limits. Police force cannot own long range missiles, they cannot own fighter jets, they cannot do all these things. So there's this talk in Japan now to change Article 9 and allow rearmament. And as I said, the talk has been going on since 1991. So till today. And there were elections in Japan of government representative, like members of parliament and councillors. The Conservative Party that has been pushing this kind of rearmament, was having a tough time. And the Prime Minister who was pushing this rearmament, who has been very vocal about the rearmament, the party has been vocal, but there was a certain Prime Minister, a former Prime Minister. His father was also a Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. Shinzo Abe has been always pushing for Japan to take back its global superiority. And even remember when Shinzo Abe visited South Korea, he didn't acknowledge that Japan was involved in the deaths or in the war with South Korea, and this made the South Koreans very mad. So Shinzo Abe has been a very conservative Japanese Prime Minister. Even through his time, he increased cooperation between America and Japan in terms of military. So at this time he was campaigning, and when immediately he died because he was assassinated, the conservative that want to push this changing of the constitution, they took almost all the seats in both of the houses. So the party that wants to change constitution now controls most of the parliament of Japan. And this is very interesting, because now it's a clear path that probably it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, that Japan will change the constitution and allow its government to become to start now militarizing its government. The new prime minister that took over, Shinzo Abe, he's okay with the plan. And where does this place now the Japanese military if it's rearmed? What are the consequences? The first consequences is that China is going to double rearm also, because in great power competition in politics, if you see your neighbor with a sword, you also make your sword, because it's not if we are going to fight. It's seen as if I need to protect myself also. It's not that I'm making the sword to attack you. I need to make the sword to protect myself, and that's what the other person sees. So China will rearm, and it will make the South China Sea to be one of the hottest, most tension areas in the world. Remember, trade that passes through the South China Sea per day could be 3 trillion, 2 trillion. That's a lot of money that passes there. Remember, South Korea is also there. The South China Sea, I'm not just putting it on the Chinese, I'm extending it a bit. The South Korea is there, North Korea is there. North Korea has also an issue with Japan and South Korea. So that line could be very contested. Another issue could be that Japan military now with American military will be used, to be everywhere in the world. If America is intervening something militarily, then Japanese army also will be forced to intervene and help out. Japan will be forced to project its military muscle. Japan will be forced to commercialize its military industry, to sell arms, to sell all these, to just turn away from its peace policy and become a military hegemony. And this is a very dangerous path, because it will also invite other players to start rearming. And it's like we're entering a new arms race, if you may say, where all these countries now are competing for global dominance and global power. If you look at how things are playing now, it seems that, because there's this talk that American military officials, military business people have been pushing for Japan to rearm, because Japan could be a very big market and could also provide technology that America and Japan can work together. So it's the military industrial complex that has been pushing for Japan to rearm and to become this state that control, because Japan has so much potential militarily. Going forward, as I said, I think the South China Sea will be if you're not careful, could be one of the next biggest conflict, and it could draw so many players. That's why people are saying that China and America should tread carefully on the Taiwan issues, because it could draw Japan, because as I said, the islands there next to it. It could draw South Korea. It could draw North Korea. Remember, Japan has an issue. The islands up there. That Japan has an issue with Russia. Russia took over the islands by force. It controls them, but Japan, before the Second World War, the islands belonged to Japan. After the Second World War, Stalin took over the islands. They've been a contentious issue. 10 years ago, Japan and Russia decided to negotiate, but the negotiation were frozen in 2014 when Russia took over Crimea. But they were just not talking. After Japan sanctioned Russia through the invasion of Ukraine, Russia terminated the negotiation and installed its military system there, the S-400s there, the military base to overlook the island. So if you look, the South China Sea is very interesting, and I can see that America is trying to build an alliance. America feels that it cannot fight these countries alone. It's trying to build an alliance, because the other day the German military declared that it's going to rearm, and this is going to make the German military to be the fourth strongest military. The fourth, yeah, because also the German military is spending almost $300 billion. The Japan military. Let's not forget South Korea, the South Korean military, the Australian military. And there's also talk that probably NATO might extend also. And this is another video I'll do. There's plans probably in the future. In politics, when you see, you need to calculate well, because South Korea and Japan are observers, but they in NATO, like they go to the meetings. They are not under NATO, but they go to the meetings. And there's talk that NATO could cover Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea in the future. And in politics, you never do things hurriedly. You wait for a trigger. As I told you, the Japanese rearming talk has been there since the 1980s, but it could not happen. But when China has risen, the South China Sea, the way in Ukraine, now they have a reason. They can say, we want a military. And that's how politics played. Probably the Western countries, especially America, is waiting for a reason now for a war probably to spark out in the South China Sea. And now they say, we cannot do this. Let's join NATO and protect. And this is very interesting. One thing I'll give the Americans, they are very strategic. They know how to create alliances. They've been very strategic. I think this is one of the best foreign policies that the American government has ever had, of creating alliances and ensuring that they strengthen those alliances when needed. Especially, especially the America after the Second World War. I think the people who took over that institution were very, very smart, because what we are seeing in America today was done by those people at that time. These all alliances, because Japan, because even if you see like a country like China, it's very tricky, because it also has to rethink, because there's Japan, there's South Korea, and there's America, there's Australia, there's New Zealand. Anyway, guys, I'll do a video about I'll look at the NATO issue in expanding to the east, and I'll do a video. Anyway, guys, please subscribe, like, and share. Road to 100 subscribers. Thank you so much, and I hope 2023 becomes your year. Ciao, cheers.